A warm welcome to the show. In the southeastern corner of Poland, in the Carpathian Mountains, lives a distinctive community whose history and culture have long existed on the sidelines of national narratives. Today, this is being challenged. A new exhibition at Warsaw's National Ethnographic Museum brings Lemko culture into the spotlight. To discuss this, I am joined by Magdalena Wróblewska, director at the Polish National Museum of Ethnography. Hello and welcome, delighted to have you with us.
Welcome, thank you for having me here.
So Andy Warhol famously said, "I'm from nowhere," but apparently this isn't true. Apparently he was Lemko. What can you tell us about this?
Yes, this is something that we wanted to remind our public about with this exhibition, to mention that not really known artists who are coming from this region are presented in our museum, but also big names like Andy Warhol, but also Nowosielski and others. So you can visit our museum and learn something new, but also look from a different perspective at those big names and big artworks in our exhibition.
Right, so what does it say about the diversity of Lemko contributions to European culture?
Well, it says a lot. It says about persistence of community that was expelled from their own villages, from their own places of living. It says a lot about the survivance of the culture that was destroyed by authorities, communist authorities in Poland. And it says a lot about different forms of presence, of identity, and forms of remembrance as well. So this exhibition is for all of our public that would like to learn more about this specific community, its traditions, but also contemporary forms of presence. That's the title of these exhibitions. Form of presence, the art of Lemkos and Carpatho-Rusyns.
And could we zoom in on the policies of Polish state during and after the Second World War, notably Operation Vistula? To explain to our viewers what happened to the Lemko people.
They were expelled. It was forced migration. They were resettled to different parts of the country, to the north, to the central Poland as well. And their culture and tradition was destroyed to make sure that this ethnic group is not present anymore, and Poland has a very homogenic society. That was the intention of communist authorities.
Mm-hmm. And this led to a widespread diaspora of Lemko people. So where did they go?
They did go to different destinations in Poland, in northern Poland, in so-called Western territories that were regained by Poland after the Second World War, but they also migrated outside of Poland. There was huge migration to different countries in Central Eastern Europe, but also to United States. So there is a big diaspora, and this exhibition is the first one that presents art and culture and traditions of Lemkos that were creating in different European and non-European countries. There was never such a show that has this global perspective on Lemkos diaspora.
Mm-hmm. And it took you 10 years to prepare this exhibition. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process?
The process was very long, but it was mostly the curator, Michał Szymko, who started his research many years ago. He's Lemko himself, so for him it was also a very personal and engaging identity project. So he started his research, and we met when I was working at the University of Warsaw, and he shared this idea with me. But at the beginning, he wanted to tell the story of Polish Lemkos. And when we met a couple of years ago, he told me that this project expanded, that he realized that without telling the story of diaspora, it will never be full. So when I started my work at the State Ethnographic Museum in Warsaw, we discussed with Michał the shape of this future exhibition, and it took us 2 years of intensive work with collaboration with museum and art institutions abroad to borrow many artworks and to present them in our museum. So it started with research and ended up with designing the idea how to embody this rich research and ideas that Michał was full of.
This is very interesting that Michał Szymko is a Lemko himself. I was wondering, did you consult other Lemko people as to how this exhibition is supposed to look like, and perhaps is it a trend in modern museum studies?
Yes, this is a trend to when museums tend to presenting ethnic groups, minorities, groups that are excluded for many years from public discourse. There is a trend to give the authority of museum, the voice, all the tools that we have, so they could speak for themselves. And our main speaker was Michał, of course, but he was consulting many people, artists. Actually, he was discussing with institutions that were collecting Lemkos art. He was consulting researchers, and he was supported by our colleague Agnieszka Kleszcz from the museum team, who was also present in this whole process. So it was a process of consultations and learning from others, and also borrowing from them artworks of their fathers, mothers, or grandparents. So it was a really big community effort to bring all these works to our museum and create this new exhibition.
And one of the most immersive spaces is the Carpathian room, and it features traditional Hyże houses. Could you tell us a bit more about this, and how important is material culture in reflecting the Lemko heritage?
It's very important because most of this material heritage was destroyed. So it's very important to have some examples in painting, in sculptures, in photographs also, to have some examples of what survived, how it looked like, how the space was created, and what were habits or objects used every day by inhabitants. So for us it was important to bring the landscape of Carpathian Mountains, but also to show the spaces the people were living in or praying in. So, for example, we have a beautiful painting by Władysław Rewak. He painted Orthodox Church, and he did a lot of such paintings. He's not professional. He was amateur who wanted to leave an evidence that this culture existed. And his dream was to be presented with Jerzy Nowosielski, his favorite painter. And even though he died 2 years ago, his paintings are presented in our museum on the same wall that Jerzy Nowosielski paintings. So this dream come true in our exhibition.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps we should also mention Nikifor, who became quite famous, even though he was an amateur, right?
Yes, Nikifor is very famous in our country, in our culture, but we also tend to forget that he was Lemko. And in our exhibition we present new set of images created by Nikifor. It was possible for our museum to acquire a big historic collection of his work. We were supported by the Ministry of Culture in Poland, and if you come to our museum you will see works that were not presented yet to our public, and in 3 months we will present another set. These are paper works, so we need to make exchange after 3 months of the exhibition.
Oh, that's very exciting. But Magdalena, if you were to tell our viewers what makes the Lemko culture unique, what would that be? How are they different from, other Poles?
I was thinking about this, if there is something distinctive, something very different from other cultures, because we see that there is the landscape is important, or we see that this connection to traditional households, for example, or the faith that plays important role in Polish culture traditionally. But what is important for me in this exhibition is different forms of present presented by these artists, so their connection to the culture that was in danger of extinction. That is something that I would say is distinctive and is present in almost every work. Thinking about the past that should be present and remembered, but also engaging contemporary forms of art and culture to make this past and this history vivid and alive again.
What about the Lemko language or dialect?
The language, I was surprised because our opening ceremony was translated into Lemko language. It's absolutely understandable for us, Polish-speaking people. So it was a very moving moment because the language was really present, and we could feel that this is very important for the community that was present at this opening, but also we could feel that we can understand each other perfectly.
So it's easier than the Silesian language, for instance.
Yes, I think it's much easier. That's my opinion, even though I know only a few words in Lemko.
That is very interesting. So looking at the exhibition and taking the audiences into consideration, what would you like them to take away from, what are you trying to show them?
I think that the most important takeaway from this exhibition is this reflection on the culture that seems very fragile. Like we have traditions, we have forms of art, we have our material culture, everyday objects that we are really connected with. And it seems all very fragile, that by political decision everything can disappear. This is something that we also observe in contemporary world, in political situation, in circumstances of war. Here we had this ethnic cleansing that was political decision, and it all seems very fragile. But on the other hand, when we think about this, there is this strongness and this tend to survival of the cultural form, the remembrance, and all these traditions and important cultural forms are coming back in works of the youngest contemporary Lemko artists. And this is something that is the most important takeaway. That would be my idea.
Mm-hmm. And how was the Lemko culture preserved among the Lemkos? I mean, over the years, what practices led to the fact that it was actually preserved?
I spoke with one of collectors who is a son of important Lemko sculpture, and he told me that for him it was important to have all these sculptures of his father preserved in good conditions, not to sell anything to a private or public collection, but to keep them together because he was sure that there will be important moment, an important big public exhibition, and he will be able to present his father in a way he would like to be presented in such an occasion. So there is, of course, a practice of collecting. There is a practice of creating contemporary art. Like many young artists, they are discovering their Lemko identity and they are creating their art, but looking back to traditional forms that they try to use and retransform or translate somehow in the language of contemporary art. There is also a photographic practice. There are people who are just taking cameras and going to these places and trying to document whatever left. If there is even a tree, a house is not present anymore, or there is something destroyed left there, they try to document, and it's also very important practice. So there is a lot of practices, and I think also curatorial and scientific practice of Michał Szymko, who is researcher, it's also very important. He tried to find all these connections, all people. It was a huge effort because he was sending letters, emails, and many people couldn't trace the right person, couldn't find the name in the archive. And he did a lot of work to collect all these stories, to connect all the data and create this story that we would like to edit in the book that will be published in the second half of this year.
So there will be a book on Lemkos, because I was wondering about the oral history, so he put them all together and there will be a book coming up.
Yes, there will be a book coming up. We are very proud of that, but we would like to create another very material form of presence of Carpatho-Rusyns, Lemkos in our culture and in our society, in Polish society.
And what about music?
Well, music was very important for us. It was a part of our opening ceremony, and we wanted also to include music in the exhibition because Andy Warhol mothers, she was singing, and it was important for us to think about the sound. We also try to involve music in our program that is connected with the exhibition, so there will be occasion to hear some music in the State Ethnographic Museum in Warsaw this year.
So let's take a moment and let's take a listen to some Lemko sounds. And on this note, we conclude Pulse of Culture. Magdalena Wróblewska, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me here.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Culture. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.